On February 29, 1968, the Kerner Commission released its report on civil disorders in the U.S. Its conclusion that the nation was moving towards two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal. That was 50 years ago. So where are we today? Our Another View Roundtable has some thoughts on the Kerner Report 50 years later, and you'll want to stick around for the discussion because it will be the last time you will hear Carol, Roger, Will, and Bill together as pundits on Another View. They've been with us since the beginning, and today is sure to be a special show, so stay tuned. lightning in this room.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Before we get started today, let me tell you about something really exciting happening in Franklin, Virginia tomorrow. A state historical marker will be dedicated to honor the career of Pauline C. Morton. She was an educator and civic leader who worked for the Virginia Department of Education starting in the 40s. She was a regional director of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, which was the first Greek letter organization for African American women, and she also chaired the boards of Franklin City Public Schools and Paul DeCamp Community College. Now, the ceremony to dedicate the marker will be held at 10 a.m. tomorrow at Paul DeCamp Community College Workforce Development Center. That's on North College Drive in Franklin, and it's open to everyone, and Congressman Bobby Scott will be one of the speakers there. So, in honor of Women's History Month and honor of Women's History Day, here's another woman who has made a significant difference. So go on out to Franklin tomorrow if you get a chance. 10 a.m. Paul DeCamp Community College. So, wow, today is a bittersweet day for me and the Another View crew. For the past 9 years, 2 years on television, 7 years on radio, you've experienced the wit and wisdom of our Another View Roundtable. You've agreed, you've disagreed, and you always tell me it's your favorite segment on Another View. But sadly, today will be the last day that these pundits will be together all at once, all in the same room. I'm so happy to see you guys.
Happy to see you, I'm glad it's bring the violin in. Come to an end.
Let me also remind our listeners that you can actually watch the roundtable live today on WHRO's YouTube page at Another View 360/VR space live. That's Another View 360/VR space live. And please tune in because you know what? They're acting crazy in the studio. So I'm loving it. So let's meet everybody again. Just in case you haven't had a chance to meet them, Roger Chesley is a columnist for the Virginian Pilot. You can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Hey, Barbara, you said we're acting crazy. How's that different from any other one?
True. Carol Pretlow is a political science professor with Norfolk State University. Hey, Carol.
Hey.
How are you?
Wonderful.
Enjoying spring break?
Yeah, wish it could last longer.
Bill Thomas is our conservative community activist. Hello, Bill.
Hey, how are you, Barbara?
Good. How you doing?
I'm going to have a hard time finding other people.
Yes, exactly. We're going to have a hard time finding
It'll all
other
be
people.
good. It'll be good. Everything will be good.
And Will Leveist, our journalist, author, talk show host, and globe-trotting person who we haven't heard from in quite a while. Welcome back.
Oh, it was a pleasure to see you. I see your husband is doing a great job.
Thank you very much. I'm sure he'll take the credit. So we are going to spend some time chatting, and kind of reminiscing and so forth. But we got a serious topic to talk about first, and that's the 50th anniversary of the Kerner Commission's report on the state of race relations in the United States. Our Lisa Godley has put together a backgrounder piece on the Kerner Commission.
During the summer of 1967, racial tensions across America had reached a boiling point. The result, violence exploded across several U.S. cities. Some of the worst destruction was in cities like Newark and Detroit. The civil unrest had started 2 years prior, with riots in the Watts section of Los Angeles and on Division Street in Chicago.
We need to know the answer, I think, to three basic questions about these riots. What happened? Why did it happen? What can be done to prevent it from happening again and again?
In an effort to get answers, President Lyndon Baines Johnson appointed the Kerner Commission to investigate. The commission was named after its chair, the governor of Illinois, Otto Kerner, and was released after 7 months of investigation. Its findings reveal that the riots were the result of the black community's frustration at the lack of economic opportunity. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called the report a physician's warning of approaching death with a prescription for life. It read, "This is our basic conclusion. Our nation is moving toward two societies, one black and one white, separate and unequal. It suggested that two of the main causes for the violence were white privilege and racism. It recommended changes like opening more suburban residential areas to blacks and encouraging them to move closer to industrial centers. And it called for change from the traditional government-built slums to smaller units on scattered sites. But President Johnson, who had already signed into law the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, chose to ignore the report, rejecting the commission's recommendations. 1 month later, riots broke out in more than 100 American cities following the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
So let's answer the question from each of your perspectives. Overall, have we made progress since the Kerner report, or has its prediction come true? Are we two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal, Roger?
The thing that kind of strikes me the most is how relative lack of progress we've really made in 50 years. And the Washington Post had a story about that just a few days ago on, in some measures we're actually worse off. In others, we've gained almost little to no progress when you look at statistics and statistical wealth, or, have we made any inroads on home ownership and many things. And I think that that's the thing that's most depressing. And also, it was mostly a black-white racial split then, and now you must also take into account Latinos, Asians, much more so. But just the fact that we tend to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, in terms of the number of people, especially black men, who are incarcerated, much worse off than 50 years ago. So I think if you're very honest, you'd have to say, my goodness, all the things that have taken place, and we're not farther along as a people now, and just depressing more than anything else.
Carol?
Well, I agree with Roger, because on one level, and I hate to call it superficial, we can go to the same movies, we can sit in a restaurant, and those are important superficially, but at gut level, education, housing, streets, policing, all of those, I don't see that much progress.
Mm-hmm. Bill?
We had the discussion maybe 2 months ago, and you asked us to grade our progress.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it a C. I think Roger gave it a C minus.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still there. I'm still there. I think the opportunities are open to us. But, and Will's brother, Dr. Tom Levis, excuse me, hits on this a lot. And he's a very, very smart guy that does it. The thing that concerns me the most, the gaps have not narrowed. Mm-hmm. There's still a gap. Even though things go down, we're still with this huge gap. Black men are, 2.5 times likely to die from cancer than white men. Black women with breast cancer, even though they have lower diagnostics, are twice as likely to die. And we have no jobs. We're still dealing with, and I think everybody's trying to do a good job with it, but why do we still have, in 2018, housing projects? I mean, I just don't understand this. Why is this huge disparity? I know people are working on it, but why do we have these huge disparities in our inner city schools? How can kids in Detroit, Cleveland, Kansas City, or Baltimore sitting in freezing classrooms, and nothing is done? The last thing that really bothers me is with the school shootings. And God bless these families that are suffering from that. I'm not taking anything away from it. It's tragic. But in Chicago, in Newport News, in Richmond, in Baltimore, in Kansas City, black kids are dying every day, to the tune of, I looked up the number, 265,000 African Americans in the last 20 years, according to FBI statistics, have died from gunfire or guns. So why it's institutionalized privileged. And we can go down to Congress, or we can go down to Virginia General Assembly, and we can ask for things that are prudent to our betterment. Why don't we take care of health care? Why don't you support people who are trying to support health care in that Portsmouth has the highest death rate among any citizen in the Commonwealth of Virginia with cancer. Or Petersburg has the highest death rate among African American men in the country with prostate cancer, and Richmond is right behind it. For me, our legacy, and I'm really bothers me that I'm going to leave this world with the same problems that I was born into in 1958 when my mama walked me up to the door to a public school in Kansas, and they told me, you can't come here. It's no different. Same thing.
Will.
I agree with my fellow panelists. I think what Bill said about the gaps is the important thing to look at, that the gap has not narrowed. There's been some improvements in terms of cost, quality of living, in terms of integration. So when people see things on television, for example, and individuals making more money, those sorts of things, they get the impression that things are so much more better. How can these stats be saying otherwise? But I think it's important for people to really pay attention to the gaps, the distance. In fact, in terms of wealth, I think there's some numbers out there that white wealth has increased, has exponentially compared to black wealth in terms of the gap. So you may have had some increase in black wealth, but the gains that blacks have made in that area, when you compare them to whites, the gains have been so much more. And so the question becomes, why is that? Why is that happening? Why is it that we can't all gain and share of the wealth of this nation on an equal playing field? That's all we're really asking for.
Well, the Carter Commission said that it's because of white privilege and the fact that whites don't want to admit that there's a problem in terms of race in this country. Is that still an issue today?
Oh, definitely. We've seen that most tragically in those instances where black men and women come into contact with police. I mean, those are often fatal encounters, and
they talked about policing in '68,
right?
Also,
and sometimes it doesn't really matter, necessarily the race of the police officer as much as what's happening in these encounters with people who are black, and what is the response, and what is the fear. The Philando Castile the case is one of the worst ones, because this is an individual who said, I have a gun, I can legally own this gun, and he still ends up dead. So,
well, now you've got one that's released, a recently released tape out of Asheville, North Carolina, where a gentleman who was arrested or approached by police for jaywalking, and then ends up getting his head beat and being charged with resisting arrest and all of these other things. And it's happened in the summer, but the tape was just recently released. Where we're saying it's like, why is this happening for jaywalking?
Right, and the instances and the those are some of the things that you just wonder. Is it going to get better? And, I don't want to sound on it downer on the last time that we're all going to be together, but it is a time to take stock. Some of the statistics in the Washington Post story, 7.5% of blacks were unemployed in 2017. That's actually up almost a percentage point from 1968. We still are so far behind in terms of home ownership. I believe it's a gap of about 30 points. Black home ownership today is about 40%. That's 30 points behind the rate for whites. The pilot had a story a few weeks ago, just how black and Asian homeowners are more likely to be denied home loans than white applicants in Hampton Roads, even when a lot of the factors are similar for blacks and whites and Asians and whites and those things. And when you take stock of it that way, yes, we can now go to most movie theaters and we don't have to sit in the balcony. We can go to most restaurants. We can go to most stores and be able to try on the clothes. And let's not make light of some of those things when you could be killed for trying to, drink water
out of the wrong fountain.
Wrong fountain. But what about all these other things that are just important to life? I mean, the home ownership issue
is key to wealth.
Yeah, it's one of the main ways that families can hand down wealth to their children.
So how do we fight against this institutional racism? Because that's where the issue seems to be. in terms of the way that we think about how we put communities together, in terms of the way that we hire or don't hire. I mean, all of this seems to be institutionalized at this point. And if 50 years ago, you could take the Kerner report today, almost, and think it was written today.
Change the date with Whiteout.
Go ahead.
No, I think, and I've been very consistent over this whole program for all 9-10 years we've been together. And it pains me to say, and I'm not pointing fingers at individuals because I'm not there anymore, but it's our leadership. Our leadership has failed us, and we just won't recognize it. And I love everybody, so I'm too old to even worry about it anymore, other than to try to get kids prepared to go forward and try to solve solutions to these problems that haven't been solved. It starts with the family. It starts with African Americans having a collectiveness, conscience, that these things are real. This institutionalized privilege, I don't even call it racism anymore, but it is. I went to a very fancy restaurant in northern Suffolk for Thanksgiving dinner, and I always had my little hat on because I can't stand the sun. And before I could even get to the door, sir, take your hat off. And I just turned right around and walked out. So that stuff.
You didn't even get in the door.
No, because it is so bad, and it's like, I don't know. It's very disappointing. And again, I'm not on a sour note, but I think we have to be realistic. And I think our group has been with Roger and Carol and Will and everybody else that's been here, and we've had a good time doing it. But we've been frank at times, and I've always been hurt because I'm leaving my children in the same position that I was in. Now, they're going to make money. They're going to be okay, but they're going to be disconnected from the black community as a whole.
Does it feel like there's an opportunity to just let some make it, whatever make it means in terms of your perspective?
The ones that they pick.
The ones that they pick.
Yeah.
Well, I think Carol wanted to jump in.
Oh, sorry, Carol.
I understand that perspective, and I didn't have it through most of my life. When I first went to college, and I went to Radford, and there were 3 black students, and all I thought of was, I'm getting in college. Same way with law school. I didn't think, but now recently, as I look back, I said, yeah, affirmative action meant a little window of people got in, and that same window got to buy homes, got to participate in the political process. But what about the masses? And now it comes clear to me that, wait a minute, this wasn't progress, this was selective.
Yes.
Very selective.
Anybody, you agree with that?
I mean, I think it's multifaceted. I think shows like yours, Barbara, that's continuing to hammer at this, that says we're not kumbaya, everything is not okay or critical. I think one of the things, to Bill's point about our leadership, I think when people get in positions of power and influence to do something, that they must do something.
Right.
That's one of the things that I can honestly say in my career that I've been wounded by. I've been hurt more about black folks than I have white folks when it comes to that in my career, that people have been in positions of power in a room where I could have been allowed to have an opportunity for a promotion. I know in our profession in journalism, I know in Roger's shop, I know specifically about colleagues who were not even allowed to get an interview to present themselves. These are African Americans, not even allowed to get an opportunity to present themselves for a job. And that other African Americans who are in position of influence say, wait a minute, let's give that person an opportunity, were not willing to stand up. So when you talk about leaders, our leaders failing us, that's a big problem. That we got a lot of African Americans in positions that could do something that don't. And they only do enough to just get some others in that are friends of theirs that will continue the status quo. And a lot of how systemic racism is maintained is you don't allow people to come in who are really going to look at changing the situation.
Let me say something right before you get in
go
here.
ahead.
And I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
That's okay, Bill. Go ahead.
I'm not trying to get you in trouble. One of the biggest issues in America, globally, across the world, is diversity and race. It is now race's ugly head where it has to be dealt with. For the past 15 years that I've known you, this is Bill Thomas speaking, without any influence whatsoever, there was a tremendous opportunity to have a platform for you and your leadership by starting all this stuff to take it forward. But what has happened, and it's not even in your field, in television and radio, it's in institutionals as well. What has happened is we have allowed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to be diluted. So now it isn't about correcting wrongs of a people that were treated like inhuman for years and years, for centuries across the world to make that right. Now it's become diversity. Now even ODU is calling themselves some kind of a institution, a minority or something. It has no flavor. And what that is crowded out is the leaders in the black community from getting the resources. Now, I'm on the leaders, I'm on them, but they don't have the financial resources to do anything because they're being given to the dreamers, they're being given to other folks that constitutionally it wasn't set up to be that way. And now we're getting squeezed out, not only because we have been lackadaisical in making sure that we protected our rights, our Civil Rights Act of 1964, the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment, we become marginalized. And we don't have now, not only do we not have the collectiveness and consciousness of a folk that are going to share each other's sorrows and gains and celebrations through our churches where we used to do it, that's gone. Now we're totally lost. We're definitely in the wilderness with no resources.
A lot of that it has to do with this James Farmer, I believe his name is Junior, the son of the Civil Rights Act, wrote a book on locking up our own in the criminal justice system, how a lot of African Americans, prosecutors, judges have been a party to this whole mass incarceration situation. Let's be honest, Eric Holder has been part of that. So we got individuals, unlike King, who are really serious about making change and willing to die for it. We got individuals who have come through behind that and compromise and just, take care of their own families and their own circles. I'm going to play devil's advocate
for just a second then. Does that mean, or do you think that the reason why they behave that way as opposed to stepping out, as you said Dr. King did and so forth, although he played politics too, is so that they could stay in those positions and that they could survive in those positions, and maybe because of the institutional racism, that's as far as they could get.
Well, you want me to start calling out names like what? Like Judge Gerald Jones? Oh, that's what you want me to? You want me to calling out names?
I want to be serious about whether or not
you got people in position
because you're in the position, do they
not
allow you to actually do the position?
If you in a position, no, it's not about somebody allowing you. Come on, Barbara. I know you being a journalist. If you because you're doing what I do. Well, let me push back. If you're in a position of influence and power, you're supposed to do the right thing, which is open up the pipeline, which is administer justice, which is, as he just said, about righting wrongs. And sometimes, yes, you got to pick your battles. But I'm talking about a lot of individuals who have distinctively said, I'm going to block this individual. You know why? Because this woman might come in here and really change things. I want to protect my job. And that's what happens a lot of times in the employment process, is really about not even allowing people to come into the pipeline to even get an interview.
I got to do this and then
hang on. I know, but I want to hear from Roger and Carol.
No,
we haven't heard from them.
Gerald Jones, Judge Jones, Delegate Jones is a dear, good friend of mine. And during the early, when I was really kicking it around in Norfolk and stuff, and in the General Assembly and at the federal level, Gerald Jones, much criticism from all of his counterparts, stood with us and the people that tried to make things happen. So if you're going to call one name, you got to call them all. But I think Gerald has done a fine job. I'm sure everybody isn't 100%, but I got to protect my friends.
All right, we're not going to go back and forth about Gerald Jones. Okay, we're not doing that. Right. Carol.
Yeah.
Hang on one second, Carol. Before I get to you, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the Kerner Commission report and where we are 50 years later with Roger Chesley of the Virginian Pilot, Carol Pretlow with NSU, community activist Bill Thomas, and journalist, author, and talk show host Will Laviste. Okay, Carol.
Okay, what I was going to say, it all boils down to politics. And so it means that not only racial diversity, but political diversity to the extent that we have that the black community and ethnic communities have a variety of people representing them. It also means more engagement from the bottom up, which is what I tell my students. Go out and vote. Don't keep complaining about this. Gather together, get out to vote, and have a wide range of opinions.
How much, Roger, does our cultural moray of reaching back, taking care of our own play in this discussion?
Well,
Because I hear they say that other communities don't have that same feeling of how we always have to take care of other family and we have to take care of the community itself in terms of giving back, where everybody else seems to be just, I got mine, go get yours.
well, I think it's one of those things where it's unfortunate that sometimes we have that burden, but what else are we going to do? I mean, if you don't do it, the situation would be even worse. And to one of the things that Will said, yes, sometimes we get in positions and we forget where we've come from, but there's so few of us in some of those positions to begin with. And it's almost like, well, why are we expecting so much more from the few people who get into some positions of clout and authority as opposed to the mostly white male people who are in those positions? I mean, that doesn't mean that we don't expect a lot from our own, but so often there are so many things that make it difficult for us once we are in those positions to make change that's going to be really lasting change.
I mean, one of the major arguments or concerns that I used to hear from the black community all the time when President Obama was in office was that he wasn't doing enough for black people. And there's always, having been an only, and I think probably everyone in this room has been an only at some point in time. There's only but so much that you can do until you actually build up the clout to be able to do more.
I just think it's the only thing I disagree with what Roger just said is that expecting more. We make the assumption that expecting you to do something means I'm expecting you to do more than what someone else is doing. No, I'm expecting you in your position to do your position, to administer justice, to know that if we're trying to increase diversity in this environment, we need to open up the pipeline and not be afraid to say, let's be fair and open up the pipeline, as opposed to when you get pushback to keep your mouth shut because you see where the wind is blowing in the room and it's comfortable for me to keep my mouth. When those moments is when these stats become real. It's in those moments. And the assumption that just to do something is doing more, Obama should have done more. He should have done something. Every other different constituency group got something. What did African Americans get? Nothing. So we're not asking them to do more. African Americans are the most reasonable, understanding folk. We didn't ask them to do more. We asked them to do something. Every other constituent group got something.
Why is it then, do you think, that there's always this feeling when you're an only that you are assumed to do something for the black community? Is that a fair assumption?
I think it's a responsibility.
Okay.
I really truly believe it's a responsibility, and you're not going to get fair weather people going along with you. I've always taken hard chances. I was the first person hired in the bank, National City Bank, in the lending officer position in the management training program, and that's all I did. Ask for statistics on who was getting the money, how they got it, and why they got it, and I was taking a task for it. The board thanked me for bringing that stuff up, but they didn't like it. I mean, there's been people out there that's done these kind of things, and they've been outcast. And it's hard because you can't make the money, you can't get to the positions you want to, and you see us being different. I mean, it's being seen different, and down in Washington and in Richmond. So you're always asking for money. Of course I am. You're not stopping ODU to compete with Norfolk State, and they get half the money per pupil than you get. How in the heck are they going to be able to compete with you guys if you give them twice as what you get? Now Centera, or one of the hospitals, EVMS, is getting ready to build up this big cancer center. You remember the Norfolk Community Hospital that was helping people, that was doing things, and even the research part? Did they get a nickel or a dime from the city of Norfolk? No. They got accolades. They didn't get any money. So my point is, the only disappointment I am, and I think Roger and Will and all of us will agree on this, and I think it's been consistent through all our times here, we're just getting the bad end of the stick, and we don't realize it. And the biggest thing, and I'll leave it and let everybody else talk, we've let this diversity business go too far. I think somebody should bring a lawsuit.
What do you mean?
I think the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as amended in 1965, and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments was directly catered to the slaves for the mistreatment of slaves, people from Africa that came here.
So you're saying because it's expanded to other minority groups?
You got this minority. Who defines what a minority is? The Constitution was clear: African descent. These people are from everywhere else.
Anybody? Carol?
I'm speechless because I agree with him.
Oh boy, it took the last show.
I know, really.
I always thought that we had a vast difference of opinion, but now, with what you just said, I agree because all of a sudden, and I'm not against immigration, I'm very much for it, but our portion of the pie is shrinking as we go along. It's
the place where it hits me is, and I brought this up in a conversation I was having the other day with someone. But when you look at the students in Florida, and again, I applaud everything that they're doing.
Agree.
You know, never again, and so forth. But why are they accepted, and why was Black Lives Matter so vilified?
Black and white.
Don't
make an excuses for it.
I'm just saying that's where I'm talking about the institutionalism of this thing, because it's race. They're fighting for the same thing.
Yeah, I think race is a big part of it. It might not be the only part of it. You're talking about teens who have taken a leadership role and have done very well on social media. They've done very well in front of the cameras. And there have been other shootings where there has been hardly any ripple effect in terms of any change coming in terms of violence and access to guns and what have you. But it has always been amazing to me just the vilification that folks with Black Lives Matter have faced. I mean, there's just been so much anger that they're a racist group, that they're a terrorist group. And all we're saying is, we don't want to be shot to death, especially for things that, loose cigarettes or being stopped on the road, or our license plate has a expired tag.
There's such a nervousness.
That's a very heavy, that's a very heavy
There is such a
penalty.
nervousness to hear Black Lives Matter, but then you get the whole, Blue Lives Matter, all lives matter. And it's the dilution, again, as you talked about, Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, and I think that one of the aspects of that too is that Black Lives Matter was pointing out police brutality. Again, the institution, the system, abusing us.
Which the Kerner report pointed out also.
Right, exactly. Whereas in the case of the shooting in the school in Florida, you had an individual who they can label as mentally ill, who's committed this atrocity, and so it becomes easier. It's not an affront necessarily to the institution that is going to defend this. So I think that's another aspect there. But you see, Sandy Hook happened. And there's nothing much done. Right. And those were predominantly white children. So it just says something about where we are as a society.
Let's talk to Hans in Chesapeake. Hi, Hans, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I hope you're all well this afternoon.
Thank you.
So I kind of wanted to, from a white perspective, particularly in my workplace, bring up the concept that you're talking about the being the only. And I think that one of the problems in the white community, at least in the conservative and older generation, is like the concept of exceptional. That because there's one person of color there. Oh, Stan probably makes more money than me. We don't need to hire any more black people. He's doing just fine. If there were any good black people, they'd be here working.
There you go.
That's why there's none.
Wow.
Thanks for being honest.
And thank you, Hans, for that perspective. We
honest
appreciate
approach.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I think that he's on point with that, because it just becomes excuses for not really being committed to opening up the pipeline
For
and being
fairness.
diverse and for fairness. Yeah, it's just
Okay.
becoming an excuse. For
Let me
that.
ask you real quickly about the media perspective in the Kerner report, and it was a time when they actually figured out that they needed to have people of color actually cover communities of color.
well, white people didn't want to go into the inner cities during the riots, and that's really how some.
That's how a lot of black journalists got started. Exactly. But the whole perspective of how media was portraying black folks. Talk about that a little bit. Go ahead, Bill.
The problem that really scars my soul, really, I'm getting ready to have a grand-something.
Congratulations.
And that grand-something, because their skin is going to be like mine, is going to have problems. No different than what I had in 1958. I mean, and it's nothing they can do about it. See, here's the problem. There is absolutely nothing. We did what we had to do. We went to school. We got our graduate degrees. We got our PhDs. We become the medical doctors. And even my sisters who went
But
to
you're not like those other black people.
What do you mean? Oh, yes, I am.
You're exceptional.
You're exceptional. Don't you know that? No, but seriously, how many times have you heard that?
No, but
in your lifetime?
Yeah, but no.
Each of you.
You hear it all the time.
I've heard it.
Because we talk well, because my mama made us take speech, and we thought she was crazy. Why do I need to take speech and diction? I don't need to do that stuff. But she did it for a reason, and a purpose. But the point is, all of the other connotations of ugliness, of vileness, of being mad or being angry, just no matter what you do, if you try to defend those people in those positions that you were mentioning, Will, if they do anything differently, that's how they're going to be categorized. Oh, he's angry. He's treating them differently. He's doing something different. But the argument that we really should have, and then I'll let it go, is that what the Kerner is reporting, these are numbers, these are stats, and nothing's really changed. The gap hasn't closed, and the positions are where we are today. And I'm not bitter about it. I'm just mad as hell. I'm mad as hell that I allowed it, and it's something that I didn't do to try to bend the curve a little bit.
So what do we do to bend the curve? What do we do? I mean, what do we do with this? We can look back on 50 years. We can say, oh, woe is me. It hasn't changed. But at the same time, we've got to move forward, and we've got to do something. What can we do? Anything, Roger?
One word, I think we have a lot of remedial work to do.
Yeah.
Part of the issue, as we all know, is what is the state of our families,
right?
What is the state of our children and the conditions that they grow up in? Are they being educated? Are they being told, no, it is not acting white to do well in school? Are we being involved? And so much of it really does go back to the family. It really does go back to what are your values and then what are the capabilities that you have in the family? Not every family necessarily knows the best way to go about this. So, and I think the frustrating thing to me is, why is there so much remedial work that still has to be done? Why you just imagine that we'd be farther along as a people, and I think that's the thing that is just so.
Do you think that it's causing because there is a gap between the middle class and lower socioeconomic gap within the black community. There's a gap there, and I'm wondering, are we going to get even further apart? Because
I think so. Sadly, I think so.
Because they are technology. If you don't understand how to deal with computers or have any kind of sense of how to deal with digits and with the things that people are doing today, you are lost. So if you graduated from a poorly driven school system in Richmond, Virginia, and you don't understand math, and you can't read and you can't write with comprehension, there's no catching up. You're just lost.
I think you asked about things that we can do. If we want to close the wealth gap, we have to start. You have to get college educated or get educated. Start going to business for yourself,
right?
And hire your own folk, or open up the opportunities for hiring of your own folk. If you're in a position employed, you're in a position of hiring people, fight to open up the pipeline so that some of our students that are graduating from Norfolk State, Hampton, ODU, a lot of predominantly white institutions are graduating more black students. provide opportunities. Fight in that room for the process to be open instead of keeping your mouth shut and just taking care of your own family. We have to engage fully in the economic system. We now had the ability to invest in Microsoft, to invest in Apple, to invest in these different things. Then go and do that. We're worried about losing black-owned businesses. Well, become a owner of Disney. Invest in these businesses. Invest in franchises. Become owners.
I don't have
Wait,
anything.
let Carol go.
No, I agree. And I think as you're talking, I was thinking as an educator, what is my role? And I have seen a change in what college means for African Americans. Instead of insisting that you memorize this portion and you take a little test and fill in the blanks, it's how does this connect with my community? So when I'm teaching, well, right now I'm teaching the relationship between the House and the Senate. Okay, what bills are actually in front of those groups, and what is our responsibility to understand it?
Involved.
So to get more involved.
Let's talk to Mark in Norfolk. Hi, Mark. You're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon. Enjoying the conversation. I think Will hit the nail on the head. It's an economic situation, and Mr. Thomas talked about how our leadership failed us. I watched the program "We're Still Rising," and
HBCUs.
the thing that really hit me was two things. One was to Mr. Thomas's point, where the president of Southern Baton Rouge basically left his students there to be slaughtered. And that's failed leadership, cowardly leadership, and that's wicked leadership. And then when I think about the work that Thurgood Marshall and Attorney Johnson put in, making the argument of separate but equal, it was at that point we had a proliferation, with the help of church, to Mr. Thomas's point, of our own educational facilities just springing up across the country. So we're rolling. But then we had poor leadership that says, you need to eat that hamburger at Woolworth. And you need to take the funds that you desperately need for your own community, and you need to make them take your money and then get hit upside the head to eat at the counter, which makes no sense. And so therefore we lost our economic footing, and we've been on a skid ever since.
Okay, Mark, thanks so much for the call. I'm going to get a bunch of people in real quickly, but I want the panel to be able to respond to you. Go ahead, Bill, first.
No, I agree 100%. It's the fact that you vote every day. Carol, you don't vote every election. Every day you spend $1, you're voting. You're voting. So you have to be careful. When the woman told me something I didn't like at the restaurant, I turned it right around and left. So you vote every day.
But I think he's absolutely right. He talked about Thurgood Marshall, one of my heroes, a graduate of the Lincoln University.
And Howard University.
That was, but he was made at Lincoln, and then he went to Howard. But the point is that now, to his point, now we have the opportunity to own a franchise in some of these businesses. It may not be the mom and pop black owned business, but you can become a black owner in some of these franchises and some of these other opportunities. That horse is out of the barn now. So we have to fully engage in this global economy and become owners in this global economy.
So let me ask you guys a question. So 50 years from now, it'll be the 100th anniversary of the Kerner Report. Will black people be fully accepted in the American society?
Only through mixed marriages.
I doubt it seriously, Barbara. I doubt it seriously. Look, but also think about where we are in the life cycle of our existence here. For so many years, we were slaves. Hundreds of centuries, hundreds of years, we were slaves, and then even after slavery, we had a century where we were not still fully considered citizens, fully with the rights and privileges that should have been ours. So we're still talking about a relatively short time in that span, about 50 years, that we've had a chance to, not be killed for drinking water or for owning a gas station or for refusing to buy certain items at certain places. So, if you look at it with that scope, Yeah, I think it's still going to take us time to be fully members and closer in terms of income, home ownership, and these other things. But it's been a slow process. I wish it were quicker. I don't think it will necessarily be there in 50 years.
We sometimes we forget our history, especially as it contains dealing with the FBI and the things the FBI has done today, the things they did 50 years ago. They wiped out our leadership. They wiped it out. The people who thought the way that gentleman was talking about, what Will is talking about, and some things what I'm talking about, we were taught to do that. And pretty much every last one of those leaders were either compromised or murdered by the government. And it was a real revolution, and it was a real takedown of people. And a lot of young folks don't understand that. You could go with Malcolm X under the same things. You could go with Dr. Martin Luther King, the good ones and the bad ones. Huey Newton or anybody.
Black Panther.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
It was all about economics.
It didn't matter if you were good or bad. It was all about economics, and we never got over that. We never got over the leadership. Lastly, the thing that I've done in my little history chase here in Virginia, I always wondered, because before I got here, I lived in Kansas, of course, and in Ohio and in New York, and I've always found these very smart people from Virginia that were Supreme Court jurists and judges and et cetera, and et cetera. I said, well, why are you not in Virginia? Because over 50 years during Jim Crow, they shipped all these smart black guys out to other states. And then we lost a huge amount of intellectual capacity and entrepreneurism to other states because they were driven out of Virginia.
Wow. We've got about 6 minutes left in the show, so I want to talk to you all about your experience on Another View. And first I want to say thank you, because it was a gamble. I knew all of you and I thought it might work.
Disappointed, haven't you?
And it did. So, Will, let's start with you.
Well, it's been a pleasure. As you know, Barbara, I was on the committee that was part
to
of
help put the whole show together.
Put it together, and so I know what your thinking was. I know that it was not an easy road to even get to have a show on television as well as radio, and so I'm glad to see that you persevered, and as it began initially, there were some rocky moments. Right, Mr. Thomas? I'm glad that you had the wherewithal and the smarts to make changes and to fight for what you believe in. So I commend you, and I wish you to continue on with Another View.
Tell us real quickly where you are now. You're traveling.
I'm still based in Virginia, but I'm also working out of Indiana, Mennonite Mission Network, which is a service agency, international opportunities, domestic, providing opportunities for service for individuals and churches. So I've been doing a lot of work there, and also traveling a lot as a result of it. So that's what's been taking me out of your presence. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, Bill.
Bill, I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you've done. I've really, really loved all of you. Roger, Carolyn, Will. No, I really do.
He does.
You know why? Because you are tolerant to different ideas. And I don't believe in certain things. I believe that you have to be true to yourself. I believe you have to protect yourself, and you have to do some things. But most of all, I want to give my kudos to my good friend Will over here. And he's in Coastal Magazine
this
month.
Right.
He
is.
Coastal Virginia.
Yes, he's in Coastal Virginia Magazine.
Shout out. Appreciate you all.
With the fine book he wrote that was called Dear Daughter, which I bought from him.
And actually, we had him on the show.
And
we talked about it.
And just real quickly, it gave me a different way of connecting with my daughter. I thought I was the best father possible. But I never asked my daughter hard questions about how her life was. Do men mess with you? If they do, what happens? Are you in bad situations? This and that and the other one. And we're still having that conversation. How long has that book been out? A year? When I got the book?
It came out last June.
Okay, so I've been talking about that. And so I've been made a better person by all of you guys. And Roger's always been a good friend. I've followed him for the past 25 years and all his good writing that he's done. I still have some of his articles that he wrote about these very subjects 25 years ago.
Fantastic. Well, Bill, we know we're going to loop you back in every now and then. You'll be around. Carol?
Well, I have enjoyed every moment, and I have learned a lot from all of you, and in particular from you. It's been an interesting experience because I've seen a diversity of opinions on a variety of issues. But more or less, I've been able to, by example, show my students that you can disagree with people and still love them and enjoy them. And so that has been particularly important to me, and I thank you, Barbara, for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. The two of you, since y'all aren't running out of town and running all over the planet, we will loop you back in. And my good friend Roger, do you remember the conversation we had at St. Mary's?
I do.
I had to beg him and plead, and finally his lovely wife Michelle convinced him to do the show.
And Barbara's not talking out of school here. I really didn't think that I wanted to be a part of this. I didn't really think that I would have the time. And it has been a pleasure. And it has, I try to come in prepared. I don't want to embarrass myself on the show. I don't want to be belittled by Will, but that's going to happen anyway. And he's younger than me, even though he looks older than me. It's amazing. You're not supposed to treat your elders like this, Will.
Low self-esteem.
But I have enjoyed this. I hope that people have gotten some things from me on this, and I hope I brought some knowledge and some well thought out arguments to it. And I think it's been good, and I hope that whoever sits in these chairs in the future will do just as well, and I'm sure that they will.
Fantastic. Well, what can I say? I mean, I love you guys all. You just made this show. I mean, the one place wherever I would go, people would first say, the round table. That'd be the first thing. And then they'd say, that Bill Thomas.
Any cute women?
Yes, I tried, Bill. We tried to hook you up. We really tried. We tried to hook you up, absolutely. But I do appreciate you guys gave it your all for 9 years. No compensation. You were here every month. And
Roger was always reminding you of that. Where's the check?
Exactly. He used to always remind me of that. So I wish you all very well, and I know we will all keep in touch. And and to the audience, thank you so much for letting us come in and be a part of their lives on each Friday, second Friday of the month.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Another View. Now, you can always check out our podcast at anotherviewradio.org, where you can also sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming programs. And please like our Facebook page when you get a chance. Next week on Another View, an update on the new vision for the city of Portsmouth. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Paris Bogle answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thank you so very, very much for listening to Another View.